All right, new chart. So today is Tatbud, traditional approaches to psychological astrology, which is completely a misnomer, by the way, because I mean, have we really been doing that? 02 May 2021. Date.
July 20th, 1952.
Time.
5:33 a.m.
Love that. Love that. If it was 5:30, I would have been very speculative, but the fact that it's 5:33 gives my heart a great amount of ease. Place?
Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh my God, the universe just won't leave me alone. Massachusetts. Male, female?
Female.
TATPA, Tatpa, 02 of May 2021. Do that. Cool. Obviously, the situation with the 28 Cancer is one that kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies. But truthfully, I mean, the doctor would really have to be really sleeping to get this wrong between this person being a 28 Cancer and the early Leo. So because of that, I'll be okay with it. But do know that that 28 Cancer is really close to the end of Cancer as well. And you know how I feel about that. But also, if someone says that they're born at 5:33 a.m., chances are their doctor wasn't sleeping, because 5:33 a.m. is a very specific time. So someone tell me the first thing that we do, please.
Degree of ascendant?
The degree of the ascendant. Thank you, Kathy Flynn. If you know the rubric, Kathy, and you want to go through it, you could just be the one to go through it.
Okay. So yeah, so we look for things that are at 28 or around there.
Well, hold on. Let me do my D3 first. Do you know what the D3 for this ascendant is?
It is Cancer, so it is. I'm not as good at doing it as my head as you are now.
Okay, so the first 10 degrees of Cancer would go to Cancer. The second 10 degrees would go to Scorpio. Wherein the third 10 degrees of Cancer, which sign does it go to?
Pisces.
Pisces, definitely, my dear. So the D3 is Pisces. The D12, I'll just tell you, it's before Cancer, so that means the D12 would be Gemini. I could explain it again, but I'll explain that afterwards. Is it Gemini? Yes, this is Gemini. Let's see, we move on. And then the next thing as well is the hidden things, the hidden aspects are the things we look for, okay? Now, my hidden aspects are, first of all, Antisha and Contra Antisha, and I gave a whole long discussion about that last week. 28 degrees. Let me ask a focal person. Gil, do you want to do, what is the Antisha of 28 degrees Cancer?
That would be 2 degrees Gemini.
Do you see anything at 2 degrees Gemini?
I do not.
Great. What's the Contra Antisha of 28 Cancer?
2 degrees Sagittarius.
2 Sag. Do you see anything at 2 Sag?
Nope.
No, thank you. You just passed another part of your exam. But knowing the Antisha and the Contra Antisha, no. All right, now the next thing is my declination. It can be. So let's see, other Oraculos person, Eileen Lu, with this ascendant, in the declination table, do you see anything near to the degree of the ascendant?
Yeah, it looks like we have both Venus and Sun.
So ascendant equals Venus equals Sun. Yeah, parallel, yeah?
Yes, parallel.
So what I said last week was I am going to stop just going through the whole thing before I actually start interpreting, and I'm going to start interpreting now. So if I had to interpret the Venus just based on Venus, the planet, not necessarily Venus, the ruler of a particular house, as we see Venus ruling the 4th house here, and Venus also ruling the 11th house. If I had to just view Venus on the terms of Venus being Venus, I have Venus, the goddess of love, Venus, the goddess of beauty, Venus, the goddess of art, Venus, the goddess of mediation, Venus, the god of harmony, and all of those things. So with this ascendant being parallel to Venus, what we can say is that this person's environment, because remember the ascendant means your environment as well. This person came from an artistic environment, an environment of beauty, an environment of art, an environment of music, an environment where people, probably this person is coming from a musical family. Could be one of the things we say with the Venus parallel the ascendant. Now, the sun also being parallel this ascendant is, if I were to view the sun just on the basis of what the sun represents, not based on the fact that the sun is ruler of the 2nd house. If I were to view the sun in terms of the sun, we could say, and the father played a very big role within the environment of this person, because the sun, as we know, is the universal significator of the father. So we've already discovered that the person is coming from an artistic environment. Why? Because this is a declination table. This is the ascendant on the declination table at 20 degrees north. The north is the plus sign. Wherever we see a plus, we have north. Wherever we see a minus, we have south. So the ascendant is 20 degrees north, 32 minutes. And Venus is 20 degrees north, 17 minutes. They literally probably have 16 minutes between them. They're basically on the same degree, you see? And this is what that looks like visually. They're so close, you can't even tell the difference. You see how all of them look jam up? The Venus, the ascendant, and the sun? They're so jam up because they're so close. Whereas Mercury, which isn't close to anything, has big canyons of space on either side of it. Anyway, so that's what that means. Let's see. Okay. So what we get from this is the person is coming from a very artistic Venusian environment where things were beautiful, and therefore this person strives to find beauty within their environment. And they're all about the beauty and the look of things, the color of things, the effect that color has on the surroundings is what we find with this person having this Venus rising. We say color in the surroundings because Venus in Leo, do you all know, can someone tell me what the exaltation of Venus is?
Pisces.
Pisces, exaltation of Venus is Pisces. Do you know that the ancient Babylonians also said that Venus was exalted in Leo? No one knew that except for Christina. The ancient Babylon, yes, Christina?
I heard it from you. I heard it from you.
Oh yes, hearing it from me represents a valid source. So yes, Venus is also having exaltation in Leo. According to the ancient Babylonians, it's a piece of information that has largely been dashed by the wayside, but it's an important thing to think about because, of course, Venus would have exaltation in flamboyant Leo. So when we see Venus in Leo, we think about the flaming Venus. And the flaming Venus is a Venus dressed in the plumes of a peacock, a Venus dressed in colors and pomp and pageantry. And that's the sort of things that we see here. So we feel already as if this person is coming from an environment of beauty, an environment of color, an environment of pomp and pageantry, an environment where art plays a very big role. The beauty of things within the environment is very important to them. And the fact that within that beauty, it doesn't really matter what other people think about it because their relationship to beauty is completely based on themselves because Venus is here in the 1st house. So their concept of beauty and their concept of the beautiful is completely caught up within they themselves. This is also someone who we may consider to be very physically beautiful. Now, where the hell do we get that? We get that from the fact that Venus ruling Libra and Venus ruling this concept of the harmonious exchange of qualities is a planet that is thought to rule over beauty as a concept. So when we have Venus in this way, Venus in the Leo rising, we have Venus, the beautiful rising, essentially. And Venus as an evening star, which this Venus is the sort of Venus that we love in general more than Venus as a morning star. What do I mean by evening and morning? The sun has already risen. Venus will rise after that sun. Let me show you what that looks like. I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking. I hope that you find this talking beneficial, because I'd hate to think that I'm just talking and nothing is happening. Okay, so I take it by the minutes. I take this, I animate this, I make it a little bit slower. Let me pull this person back. So this is the day that that person was born. And if I so this is the sun below the horizon. Sun has not yet risen. But I say, let me animate this. Let the speed go forward. Here we see the sun rising, 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 the sun risen. Yes? So what that means is that the sun rose on that day before that Venus rose. So when Venus rises after the sun, Venus is called the evening star. When Venus rises before the sun, Venus is called the morning star. Where in the Bible do we hear this term, the morning star?
Lucifer.
Lucifer, because Lucifer means light of the morning. The name Lucifer, Lucifer morning star. Lucifer means the morning star, the star or the flame that rises in the morning, essentially. And so Venus as a morning star is called Venus Lucifer. Wow, did you know that? My darlings, I have so much to tell you, so much to teach you. Venus rising in the morning is called Venus morning star or Lucifer morning star. And what do we know about Lucifer from the Bible? The good qualities. Lucifer was beautiful, more beautiful than all the other angels. Lucifer had a voice that was more beautiful than all the other angels. And Lucifer was close to God. Of course, Lucifer was close to God because the planets that are closest to the sun from our geocentric perspective, i.e. Mercury and Venus, they can never be far away from the sun, astrologically speaking. Mercury can only be one sign away from the sun. Venus can only be a maximum of 2 signs away from the sun. So Venus, i.e. Lucifer, is always close to God because Venus and the sun can only be separated a maximum distance of 48 degrees of arc. Whereas the moon can be wherever she likes, and Saturn can be wherever he likes, and Mars can be wherever he likes, Jupiter can be wherever he likes. Venus and Mercury can only ever be 48 degrees away from the sun in terms of Venus, or 28 degrees away from the sun in terms of Mercury. So if you look in your birth chart, your Mercury is either going to be in the same sign as the sun, in the sign before the sun, or in the sign that came after the sun. Who amongst us has a Mercury that defies these rules? Your Mercury can either only be in the same sign as the sun, the sign before your sun, or the sign after the sun. Is everybody in agreement? Okay, good. Venus can be in the same sign as your sun, the sign that came before the sun, or the sign before that, but only a little bit in the sign before that. Same thing afterwards. Who has a Venus that is more than 2 signs away from their sun. Not a soul in this present incarnation of life. If you do, you need to see me after class, because we need to harvest your organs and sell them to science. I'm joking. No one's going to harvest anyone's organs. Okay, cool. So that is the situation with that. So anyway, we have the artistic environment of beauty that this person comes from. And we also have this concept of the beauty within this person as a standalone factor, that this person is someone who we think has the ability to be physically, stunningly, luxuriously beautiful. Now, there's another thing with Venus and Venusian people, and we find this as far back as the 13th century. The person born with Venus rising has a love dimple in their chin. Isn't that cool? Am I the only one turned on by these little tiny snippets from the ancient world? That the person who has Venus rising has a love dimple in their chin. Wow. And they also have dimples in general, because dimples are a Venusian thing. Do I? No, I don't. Neither do I have the crimson chin, but that's okay. I could live without the crimson chin. But they definitely have the see them there? They're there. They're on top, they're not on the side. Anyway, come back. But that's another thing to know about Venus from a physical characteristic of the Venus. So maybe this person has the love dimple in the chin or the dimples in the face. Where else do we go from this? Okay, so that's it with the Venus. And the sun gives this person a bright and shining disposition, a bright and shining personality, which is lovely, because we want for our soul, we want for Cancer people in particular to have a sun that's rising. We want for the person, how did this chart get to here? 29 Cancer, wasn't it 28?
You animated it.
Oh, sorry. I was like, what's going on in life? Because if it was 29 rising, I probably would have had a greater problem with it, but no, I animated it. Let me quit that. Quit that.
Yeah, the time is 5:33 a.m.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm coming back. I realized. Thank you. So anyway, that's it with the dimples. All right, so the next thing in terms of this person is we have the sun rising. We want our Cancerian people to have the sun rising, because if the sun isn't rising for a Cancer person, then the disposition of the Cancerian person is very susceptible to environmental influences, which can potentially cause the Cancerian person to be susceptible to having a weaker constitution than other people. So we love when the sun is rising in a Cancer rising chart, because it gives the person a stronger physical body and a stronger constitution, which this person technically needs with the moon in the 12th house. So here we see something that corrects. We see a corrective faculty already with the sun rising, because the sun rising gives this person a stronger physical constitution. Now, because the sun represents the vital fire within everything within life, and if the sun is conjunct my ascendant, that means the sun is expressing itself through my body. Now, what does that mean for the sun to express itself through the body? That means that this person is a warm, a charismatic, an outgoing person who, as you see them, you feel a sense of joy and a sense of happiness and a sense of expansion. There's expansion within this person's energy. There's a sense of warmth and love and caring and compassion for other people, but not in a way that's soppy and wet, but in a way that feels warm and inviting, which is nice. We love that for this person. We love it a lot. So that's what we have with the sun, not only conjunct the ascendant, but also with the sun parallel to the ascendant by declination. Next up, we have a next hidden aspect, which is our octiles. I know that 28 degrees cardinal equals 13 degrees of the mutable signs. So I look and I see, is there anything in this chart at 13 mutable? And the answer to that question is no, because there's nothing in this chart that's mutable whatsoever. Interesting, but not necessarily worth our deep mental considerations. Let's see, we want to have Chiron in this because I'm a Chiron person. I love Chiron. So the answer to that is no, not available. Then we are done with all the hidden stuff. Now we look for the obvious stuff, which is where Kathy Flynn was going. So I start at 28 and I rush around the chart looking for numbers close to 28. Kathy, you want to do it?
Really, the sun is the only one, right? Unless we want to count Mercury.
Sun is the only one. The Mercury would count if it wasn't in a sign adjacent to the Cancer, because you know that,
Right.
yeah, so it would kind of be a semi-sextile, but we don't frig with semi-sextiles. So we're just going to mosey on past that like it doesn't exist. The Neptune is a no. The Saturn is a no. The Neptune for me is going to be a yes. Now, I know that amongst ourselves, we're wondering, Michael, Ashton, Brian, why would you consider that Neptune to be a yes when that Neptune is having how many degrees? When that Neptune is having 9 degrees between it and the ascendant. And I will say to you, I'll make something up. But what I will say to you is it's a wide square. In the Michael Brian world of things, that is a wide square. Now, if that Neptune was someplace else in this chart, it probably wouldn't be as meaningful to me. But the strength of the aspects that that Neptune creates is made even more powerful by the fact that that Neptune is angular in the 4th house. So I have Neptune squaring the ascendant, which is a precarious sort of situation because that Neptune is squaring the ascendant from the 4th house, which says that the 4th house is already going to be important to this ascendant. Someone tell me what the 4th house represents who isn't a focus student or a PCA student. Kathy, you could tell me if you like, or anyone can tell me, what does the 4th house represent?
Home and family.
Home and family. Home and family. So the 4th house is already important for some other reasons in this person's life. Christina Rivera, tell me why the 4th house is already important within this chart for other reasons. What are the other reasons that makes this 4th house important? If you feel as if the answer is elusive, pass it on to, let's see who else is here.
Yeah, I'm passing it on. I'm not really sure.
Okay, pass it on to Celeste. Celeste, why within this chart is the 4th house already important for this person?
Because it is ruled by Venus, which has such prominence according to the, with the ascendant.
Thank you, Celeste.
Sure.
So what Celeste just said is that the ruler of the 4th house is in the 1st house, and it is that Venus. And we've already been talking up that Venus. We've spoken about that Venus from here to the mountaintops. So that Venus ruling Libra, which goes back to basic schmasic astrological rulership, we know that the ruler of the 4th house is in the 1st house, which means that my family has an indelible mark upon me already. Fine, everybody's family has an indelible mark upon them. But here we also see that Venus ruling the 11th house. And when a planet rules 2 houses, it combines the meanings of those 2 houses. So here what we see is my friends and my family have an indelible impact and an indelible mark on who I am as a person. But we can say that about anything and anyone. So what might we say about this house in particular? Well, my friends become my family. Or I hold the friends that I have within this world as if they are my family. And that family of friends becomes very deeply imprinted on me as a person. I love my friends love me. And when you see me and my friends, you see me with my family, because that's essentially the role that my friends have within my life. Friends as family, friends as the new family that I've created for myself, essentially. Wonderful. Let us move on. So the fact that this Neptune is squaring that ascendant says to us that the family home squared the body of this person. Now, what does that mean? Neptune squaring the ascendant. Neptune is a watery planet, not because it has rulership over anything, but because Neptune as a concept is water, and that ascendant is also water. When we have Neptune squaring the ascendant from the 4th house, there can be a sense of a bullying within the household and the home. When we have Neptune squaring the ascendant from the 10th house, there can be a sense of a bullying that happens within the workplace. The reason why we say a bullying is because Neptune, when it squares something, it demands that that thing dissolves. Did you hear me? When Neptune squares something, it demands that that thing dissolves. So what is being asked to dissolve when we have Neptune squaring the ascendant? Someone tell me.
Maybe the sense of personhood really wasn't supported at home, just constant, denigration or what have you.
Yes, definitely. So when we have Neptune squaring the ascendant from the 4th house, we get a sense of maybe the sense of my personhood was what was dissolved because of the heavy impact my family had on me specifically. And this ties in with anything that we might possibly say about Cancer, doesn't it? Now, because wouldn't we say some of those things about Cancer in general? The family is very important and the blah, blah. And we could write a whole epistle about Cancer and the family and the Cancerian person taking on the burdens of their family and all of these things. Now, remember that at Oraculos, the type of astrology we practice is the golden string theory. Gail, you should write that down because I just made that up on the spot. That literally just came out of my ether. And you should write that down because it's not actually a real thing, but it sounds amazing. And in the West, we know that people in the West are experiencing. So if I go and say I'm offering a certification in golden string theory astrology, I can assure you it will be full tomorrow. So golden string theory astrology, Gil, write that down, please. We're going to copyright that. So what does this mean with anything? Does anyone know about this golden string theory astrology? I've said it a couple of times. What do I mean by that?
Well, I'd suspect it was one thing leads to another and just keep following things that say the same thing and you have confirmation that what you're saying is true. Exactly.
It means that if a chart is going to say something to you at all, it's going to find 50 ways to say it. I was joking today, well, I wasn't joking because it actually happened, that we had a chart that was submitted in class earlier. And as I looked at the chart, all I saw in the chart was sex. Everything within the chart was sex, 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 all over the chart, to the point where I started to get, it's a feeling that's halfway between horny and nauseous. So it's like a horny, Kadesi, I'm so sorry. I know there are children within your environment.
She was like 17, but she's gone now, so. Okay,
good. So there's like a horny nausea that, I don't know if I'm the only one who experiences this, but it's like, oh my God, this is too much sex. Like, please back away. And that's all I saw within the chart from start to finish, sex, 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 sex. And that's all I spoke to the point where I feel as if the students were like, Michael, give it a break. But then when we heard about the life of the person, a lot of it was sex, 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 sex. It was a very sexy, you know, we have very hot charts at Oraculos. You should stay tuned. And it was everything sex. It was person works and has friends with sex workers, has a very liberal view of sex, also is about to shoot a porno as the person behind the camera, not the person in front of the camera. Whenever they go back home, they like to take photos of the street where the prostitutes hang out. Even before they knew prostitutes hung out there, they like taking photos of that street. Why? What draws such a sexual being to the prostitute street? It's the sex within the chart. And that's all I saw. And so the point of the matter is, if a chart is going to show you one thing, it's going to show you it in a bajillion million ways. And if you hold on to that golden string that the chart offers you at the beginning of a reading and you follow it, you will end up finding confirmation upon confirmation upon confirmation. We are judgmental beings in general. The person who really brought this home to me was my wonderful friend, Judith Hill, who said, Michael, today in the 21st century, the reason why the astrology is so bad is because we don't like to use the word judgment in relation to astrology. We don't like to judge things. No one's trying to be judgmental anymore. And that's why the state of our astrology is so poor in the 21st century. And I was like, wow, Judith. You know, a lot of people like Judith because Judith is a great astrologer. And Judith has some very strong opinions about certain things that sound worse when I say it than it sounds when she says it. You know, me and Judith say the same things actually, but when I say it, they're like, who is this little shit just born yesterday having these opinions? But Judith has the same opinions. But anyway, the point is that we don't like to judge things. We don't like to cast judgment about things because a judgment feels completely antithetical to free will. That's another discussion for another day. What you need to know is the strength of your astrological interpretation is directly proportionate to the strength with which you're willing to say something in a clear and an unambiguous way. And at Oraculos, I teach my students that it's better to be wrong than to be ambiguous. Because if you follow the golden thread, Gil, it's catching on. Write it down. If you follow the golden thread that a chart has given you and you interpret that information in one particular way, but that information doesn't really land with the person, chances are when they tell you what that thing means in their life, you will be able to see, oh, I can see how that means that as well, because your interpretation will not be that far off from what they say if you're following a system. It happened recently. I was giving a reading to someone and I said, you know, this situation was XYZ within your life. And he said to me, you know, I understand why you would interpret it that way, but it actually didn't pan out that way. So let me tell you how that same thing you interpreted could be looked at from another perspective. And when he said it to me, it was like, oh, wow, that's the same thing fed through a different filter. And if you're practicing good, concrete astrology, even if you get it wrong, it'll still be right. Or even if you get it wrong, it'll still be close enough to the womb of rightness that, you know what I mean? Anyway, I'm sorry. My grandfather was a pastor. My other grandfather was a pastor. I'm sorry for the preaching. So we move on with this situation. I don't know where I was. Where was I with this?
Neptune square the ascendant.
Yeah, I feel like I said something after that though. But definitely Neptune squaring the ascendant here is saying that the family story, one, we know the family is already super important because the Venus is in the first house. And when we say something is super important in astrology, we have to ask ourselves why. And that should always be a primary question for us. Why is this family so important? Why would this family be so important? Because the moment you say that something is very important, you always have to question that very. So the question here when I see this Venus in the first house is, why is your family so important to you? Why is your family pressing on you like that? Like, why are you and your family so close? What is the purpose of that? And what we see here is with the Neptune squaring the ascendant from the fourth house, we get a sense that there were fundamental points of disillusionment, as well as fundamental points of dissatisfaction, as well as fundamental points of potential disappointment within the family unit and within the family home that leaned too deeply into your own personal sense of your own identity, that caused your identity to become absorbed within the collective, more than it being an expression of you as an individual person. What that means is, I don't make I statements, I make we statements. Because the statements that I make are always filtered through what impact do these actions have on my family. Because the family has a very big impact on diminishing somewhat the barrier or the boundary of what you identify yourself as or who you identify yourself as. I was watching Grey's Anatomy and there's this girl in the wheelchair and she's kind of dependent on her family because she's in the wheelchair, and there's the option for her to get a surgery to not be in the wheelchair, and her family's like, no, you know, she's our little daughter and, you know, she's the princess of this family and we take care of her. And so it becomes this negative enmeshment that prevents this little girl from feeling as if to be rid of this wheelchair is actually something that she's even willing to explore. So that's one of the things we see here in terms of the Neptune association. Neptune in the fourth house could also amplify this thing that we already said about this person coming from an artistic musical family. When it comes to Neptune, I tend to lean more towards music as being a particularly Neptunian thing, because Neptune is music. I mean, there are a million ways to talk about that, but Neptune really has within it this heart of music, the overwhelming influence of music to completely subdue you and completely drown you and to cause you to have a religious experience. Those are Neptunian experiences, that feeling of being washed away by the sound of deep and otherworldly music. So we could also have this as an amplification of the fact that this person is coming from a musical family. But we also, having the square to the ascendant, know that there is something occurring within the family. This person also has moon square Neptune as well. So we're definitely having more and more corroborating things. Not only is my Cancer ascendant squaring the Neptune, but the moon is also squaring Neptune, and the moon is me. Why do I say the moon is me, Christina Rivera, within this chart?
The ruler of the ascendant.
Because the moon is the ruler of the ascendant. Yes, that is all. The moon is the ruler of the ascendant. Wow. As we look at the moon, we're also tempted to look down at our declination table, just because if you open the can of worms about one thing, you want to see it in a couple places. And the moon is here at 26 degrees declination, which means the moon is very much far out of bounds. Which doesn't really mean that much. What it does mean, an out of bounds moon, is that the person is living very heavily through their emotions, you know, and so the emotions most certainly come out of this person, and you don't have to ask twice about them because the emotions are there, which is lovely. It's lovely to have people who, you know, my emotions are just there on the table for you to see it, but it could also be a little bit overwhelming sometimes. So we have an excess of emotion showing up as well. The moon squaring the Neptune, however, is particularly important because, especially in water sign people, when they have that moon squaring the Neptune, you remember what I said earlier at the beginning of class regarding the health and the constitution of this person, and how just having Cancer rising by itself is oftentimes not the strongest thing constitutionally, but the sun was a corrective measure to that the sun essentially corrected that. Well, then came the moon square the Neptune. which is, you know, whatever the sun corrects, the moon square Neptune kind of pulls out. Again, just because that's the nature of the moon square Neptune. This person is also having their sun square Neptune as well. There's a lot of Neptune in this chart. And when we see this much Neptune in the chart of a watery person, one of the things we think about is alcoholism. And the reason why we think about alcoholism as a potential thing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be this person's alcoholism, even though 9 times out of 10 it is, sometimes it could be the effect of alcoholism on the family as a unit. And one of the reasons why we think about alcoholism is because alcoholism is oftentimes the substance of choice when it comes to very watery people. These are vast generalizations. This is most definitely a fact, but they're also not vast generalizations. And the other day in Oraculos, I mean, this is still Oraculos, but the other day in the advanced class, we were talking about different sorts of substance abuses and different sorts of substances represented by different sorts of things. And that's a fascinating research. I actually would love to do that research because I have some thoughts on different substances and what their planetary signatures are. But anyway, so for a person who is so heavily imprinted upon by their family, we wonder whether or not the intensity of the pressures of their family around them causes them to want to escape those pressures because of fundamental disappointments within the family circle. And is one of the ways in which I'm escaping those disappointments through substance abuse or through addiction is one of the things that we see here. And the specific, like I said, the specific substance of choice when it comes to the Neptunian factor is very oftentimes alcohol. And so one of the things you might say to this person, even if this person is not afflicted with some substance abuse situation, is, hey, you may really want to stay away from alcohol in general because there is a proclivity or there's a tendency within your chart to lean into alcohol a little bit too heavily if you ever do start drinking, you know? So that's the thing. Anyway, so that's the Neptune squaring the ascendant. Then the next thing that we have here, I think people oftentimes don't take into consideration Neptune's relationship to disappointment. We love to talk about Neptune as illusion and delusion and fantasy and all of these things, but Neptune by square carries within it the seed of disappointment very often. And it is still the music and the art and all of that, but you know, just so you know. Now, the next thing that we have here, aspecting the ascendant, the Mars is too far. We won't look at it. What is this called? The Chiron is not aspecting the ascendant, but the Chiron is sure as hell in opposition to that moon. Now, you all have heard my moon Chiron speculations many times. This is a little bit too wide for my personal moon Chiron liking. When I talk about moon Chiron, I'm talking about moon smack dab on top of Chiron, as in moon at 8 degrees, Chiron at 8 degrees, you see? Or moon at 10 and Chiron at 10 degrees. So this is a little bit too wide for my moon Chiron speculation, but just so that you know, my thought in moon Chiron after viewing it in many, many, many charts is that moon Chiron has to specifically do with mental issues and mental trauma surrounding the mother. This can be moon conjunct Chiron, as in moon and Chiron directly on top of each other. This can also be, what is the other thing? It can also be moon square Chiron, as in literally on top of each other. It can also be moon opposite Chiron. I haven't actually seen a lot of moon Chiron by declination, but maybe that's another thing as well. But whenever someone is having moon Chiron as a very tight, hard aspect, and our hard aspects are conjunctions, oppositions, and trines, that oftentimes indicate psychological issues with the mother, mental health issues surrounding the mother, psychosis of the mother, and the list of mother things go on and on and on. I'm actually doing a Moon Chiron research because it's a good thing. And I'm very sure if someone has Moon Chiron in a midpoint structure, it would mean the same thing as well. Because as you know, well, you probably don't know because I haven't spoken about them a lot, but midpoints are the creme de la creme of astrology, and more people should be using midpoints. So saying all that to say, this person has Moon Chiron by opposition, and the moon is already in the 12th house. And so that causes us to ask a couple questions. One of which is, we already know that the moon is kind of just a general, universal significator of our mothers in general. That's not necessarily something we have to think about. The moon is a general, universal significator of the mother. Oh me, oh my. And we also know that within traditional astrology, the 10th house is the house of the mother. So here in this chart, we have Mars at 10 degrees Scorpio, 17 minutes, having no visible aspect to that Chiron other than that lovely sextile between them. But if we go to the declination table, we have Mars at 16 degrees south and Chiron at 16 degrees south. So we do have a mother Chiron story within this chart that does make us believe that some of our standard mother Chiron stories are applicable here. And the mother Chiron stories are that I felt a deep sense of isolation in relationship to mom. I felt as if mommy wasn't there. Mommy did things that made herself actively not be there. The story of mom is one of the greatest stories of trauma within my personal life. And therefore it's something that I stick within my 12th house. You see? Because we stick things in our 12th house that we don't want to talk about. We stick bad boyfriends in our 12th house. That's where all of my bad boyfriends are. We stick our bad boyfriends in the 12th house. We stick our bad girlfriends in the 12th house. We stick people who we accidentally ran over with our car in the 12th house. All of the people who we don't probably want to, deal with anymore goes into our 12th house. And here we have the moon, the general significance of mom in my 12th house. Interesting. So that's that with the Chiron aspects. And then we have the node is a nothing. And then we have the Jupiter is also a nothing in terms of the ascendant. I mean, it's wide. We don't need to integrate the Jupiter. So fine, we've done all the obvious things to the ascendant. Now we go and we take a look at just what is Cancer as a cardinal water sign ruled by the moon anyway. The element of your ascendant is going to be your chief operating system for your life. If you have an element that your ascendant sign is in, that element represents the chief operating system within your life. What within your life will desire to be made manifest within you? What central theme within your life, what central force of nature will want to be most manifest within you more than anything else? And here, that's chief central force of nature is water. So with water as this person's chief operating system, we know that this person is someone who cares about the non-tangible things that makes life meaningful. Because that's what water does. Water cares about the non-tangible things that makes life meaningful. Water is pre-material and it's also pre-intellect. What that means is that the water person does not need to go through a rational train of thought in order for them to come to whatever conclusions they're going to come to. The water person also doesn't need to go through any material reason. Like the Taurus person needs to do things in this way because they need to build a house, or they need to do things in this way because they need to make X amount of dollars. The watery person doesn't necessarily care about those things as factors within their reality. They don't necessarily care about the house. They don't necessarily care about the money. What they do care about is, what is the feeling content of these experiences? And how does this thing make me feel? Because guess what? If you're not speaking to the feeling content of a person, of a watery person, you don't have them at all. You don't have access to them at all. They need to know that the feeling that they get from being around you is a feeling that justifies them being around you. They're not there for the small talk. They're not there for the financial security. They're not there for the excitement. They're there for the genuine sense of, does this connection make me feel good? And they don't even need to be able to explain that connection. They don't need to be able to explain why it makes them feel good. It's just, does this connection make me feel good? What do I feel like when I stare into your eyes? What do I feel like when I'm engaged in the work that I'm doing? What do I feel like when I'm building the sort of home environment around me that I'm building? What does it feel like for me? Because the watery person would much rather be caught up within the rapture of a feeling experience than an intellectual experience. That's water. There are some things that modify that, but for the most part, that is our watery situation. Now, moving on, this is a cardinal water, and cardinal represents the forces in nature that move. So this is saying that this person will actively move themselves towards mobilizing things that emotionally feel good for them within the world. So they'll move towards building the relationship. They'll move towards building the home. They'll move towards building the family, which is why we say that family is such an important thing for this person, and family is such an important thing for the Cancer in general, because the mobilization of things that feel good oftentimes begins in the home. Our concept of what feels good from what feels bad oftentimes has our home situation as a strong frame of reference. I know this feels good because my mother used to do this to me every night. Or my mother fed me this for breakfast every morning. Or I know this feels bad because my dad forced me to eat this for breakfast every morning. Or my mother, like our association to our likes and dislikes are usually built and established within the home. So the Cancerian person charges forward with the desire to build a home because they realize that the home serves as a fundamental watery container or a fundamental watery womb that allows them to build the sort of experiences that feels very deep and meaningful to them. And so the home of the Cancerian person becomes an inalienable place. You cannot frig around in the home of a Cancerian person because their home is their sanctuary, but also the family that they have becomes their sanctuary. Now, Cancer is a cardinal water sign ruled by the moon. And the moon is a very fickle planet. The moon is the fastest moving planet from our geocentric perspective. In terms of things that move, we know that Mercury is actually a planet and the moon is a luminary, but that is of no importance. The moon is the fastest moving stellar body from our geocentric perspective. So we have a feeling that this lunar person is very changeable and that they can change into many things in rapid succession. And a part of where they're changing is within their own watery core. What does it mean to change within my watery core? Well, from an emotional perspective, I can flip-flop between emotions quite easily. Sometimes I'm at a very high. Other times, literally 2 seconds later, I'm at a very low. And the person who catches me at a very low and wants to talk to me from a very low will be completely shocked shitless when they find that I'm now back at a high. And so that causes a sense of, when we say emotional, I don't want to use the word volatility, but I will use the word changeability because of that, the changing tides of the emotions that we find within this person. We get a sense that this person is probably needing peace more than anybody else, because the peace that comes from establishing a stable family and a stable home is exactly what this person needs for their nerves They already are changeable. They already are deeply emotional all by themselves. They already have a great excess of emotions all by themselves. And their emotions and the excess of their emotions oftentimes works against them. And we know that it works against them because the moon is in the 12th house, and the 12th house represents your hidden enemies. So when we have our emotions within our hidden enemies, that could be very well saying that my emotions are my hidden enemies, or that I find my emotions or the volatility or the changeability within my emotions becoming a hidden enemy sort of thing, an antagonistic thing within my life. What the moon does for everyone, however, especially the moon in Cancer and the moon as the rule of Cancer, is it predisposes a person towards being very maternal. And that being very maternal causes that person to take on other people around them as their responsibility. We know that this person takes on other people around them as their responsibility because they also have Saturn in the 4th house. We say Saturn is in the 4th house because by the 5-degree rule, Saturn is within 5 degrees of the 4th house cusp, and therefore Saturn is in the 4th. And so we know that this person has a predisposition to taking care of other people around them, and that as well may be a part of what gets this person in the doghouse. The inability to differentiate those same family members from my actual friends, or those friends from my actual family members. This brooding over the family, this brooding over friends, and this transference of the concept of family onto everyone around me becomes a very big deal within the life of this person. You see? And so that becomes one of the lunar pathologies, this transference of the concept of family onto everyone that I meet. And the difficulty with transferring family onto everyone that you meet is that you are also transferring certain expectations upon those people as well. And when those people don't deliver on the goods of those expectations, you, as the moon in Cancer, end up feeling that much more hurt by them. And you end up feeling that much more in pain and that much more in grief by their actions. And it causes you to respond in an overly emotional way, when in fact that person, if you had read the very bold print of that person's entrance into your life, they really weren't coming with that much to begin with. So the fact that you silently expect that much more from them becomes also a part of the problem. Now, let us move on. This is a moon square Saturn as well. You know, I'm a pretty slow person, and I don't see things as quickly as other people do. So I'm sure that all of you saw that moon square Saturn before I saw that moon square Saturn. Gil is nodding his head to say, yes, Michael, you're a very slow person and you don't see things quickly enough. Thank you, Gil. So anyway, that is so the moon square Saturn situation is always something worth noting. Someone tell me what you think about moon square Saturn in general.
A tragic experience with discipline.
A tragic experience with discipline. You should write novels. Someone else tell me about moon square Saturn.
It's another challenge regarding mom.
Another challenge regarding mom. Good stuff. Kathy, I saw you. Go for it.
Restrictions that affect you emotionally.
Restrictions that affect you emotionally. I think I spoke about this last week, about purchasable, about transactional love in relationship to the family and in relationship to the household and the home. Moon square Saturn can also do with a limitation of breast milk. And so sometimes if we find moon square Saturn, and I've only had one client like this once, who had difficulty generating breast milk in her body to feed her newborn, basically. And that is a very physical manifestation of this. but it comes from very real things that occur within the life of a person. And those very real things are, I don't feel as if I was nourished within the right way. I don't feel as if I was fed in the right way. I don't feel as if with food I was supported in the right way. And oftentimes that lack of support, lack of food, lack of nourishment comes from mom or comes as a result of mom. So this person, as a result of not feeling that deep sense of support or nurture and feeding, may move within the world. And now here's the conundrum, because before I said that this person is mom, mom, mom to everybody else around them. But how do we balance this, or how do we synthesize this, that this person feels this direct lack of nurture from their maternal home, but also they turn around and want to nurture everyone? Actually, it isn't that hard to balance. If oftentimes in life, if I feel as if I haven't gotten something from my household and home, my response to that is to make up for that or to compensate for that by becoming that thing within the life of other people. You see, I wasn't nurtured, so therefore I become the nurturer in chief. I wasn't taken care of, so therefore I become the taken care of in chief. And so this person may be able to respond to this Moon Saturn situation by nullifying some of that. But so we burn karma by doing things that are the counter thing to our karma. So my cross to bear in life has been a lack of me feeling nurtured. So I go out and I nurture other people so I can make up for this feeling. I can compensate for this feeling of being nurtured by virtue of what I can do for others. That's a great thing. So there's that. Now within this person's specific chart, we have Saturn ruling the 6th house. And the 6th house represents what, people?
Health or ill health specifically.
Yes, the 6th house represents ill health specifically. So we have Saturn, the ruler of ill health specifically, in square to this person. And the two of these planets are very, very strong. The moon in Cancer is very, very strong. And Saturn in Libra is also very, very strong. However, Saturn is in Libra and angular, whereas the moon is in Cancer, cadent. So what does this mean in terms of the health of this person? What this means is that issues surrounding the health have been a part of this person's life from a very early portion or from a very early period within their lives. So their lives were demarcated with a very early severe health blank, whatever that health blank is. And it may just be one issue. It may not even be several issues. It's like there's one major roadblock within my life surrounding my health, and that happens very early on within my life. And probably I move past it, but my entire life is probably continues to be characterized by this one health situation that has been the thing that has indelibly left its mark on me. Now, when we see this and we think about the fact that the family has indelibly left their mark on this person, we wonder whether this is a hereditary issue. And because Saturn within this chart is in Libra, Saturn in Libra is going to represent the kidneys in particular. So we wonder if this is a hereditary renal issue that may be a part of this person's, what this person receives from the family. Now, the other thing that ties into hereditary renal issues, or the other thing that ties into hereditary issues in general, is that we've already spoken about the Neptune being a potential signature for alcoholism. And so one of the things we want to know at this point is, one of the things you want to know at this point is there potentially a hereditary Neptunian alcoholism, or is this potentially a hereditary, sometimes babies are born to alcoholic parents and the child may have alcohol poisoning, and that could be a thing for the child as well. So is this something to that effect? Which is interesting because I think we were talking about this earlier as well. All right, so that is that. Now, so we dealt with the Saturn. Saturn is also ruling this person's husband or spouse, if this person has a spouse. And here we see this. Why do I say Saturn rules the spouse? Because Saturn rules Capricorn. Capricorn is on the cusp of the 7th house, and therefore Saturn is in a square with the moon. So this person has moon square Saturn again. So when you're in a square with your spouse, what that means is that there's wrangling and jangling between the two of you. That's from William Lilly, 1647. In Christian astrology, William Lilly writes, there will be wrangling and jangling between them all the days of their life. Now, you have to forgive these people from the Renaissance because they were very colorful with their language. Let's take a look at this Saturn via another lens. Okay, so there's nothing much happening to the Saturn in declination. Great. But the Saturn is also in Libra, and Libra, as we know, is the exaltation of Saturn. Now, there's a thing that the ancients say about exalted or essentially dignified malefics. We call Saturn and Mars malefics because they are the planets that are most likely to do harm within your chart. Yes? We're all, Catherine is shaking her head, no. Okay, anyway, so Saturn and Mars are most likely to do harm within your chart. But if Catherine was indeed shaking her head no, she'd be right for saying that, because Jupiter, the greater benefic, the planet that does the most amount of good, can also do the most amount of harm. Jupiter does harm through excess. Excess eating, excess alcohol, excess everything. Jupiter does the most amount of harm through excess. And Venus does the most amount of harm through excess of the loins. So if you look in any of the old books, Venus does the most amount of harm because Venus pursues venereal passions. Do you know all of the planets have like a word to define the people who are ruled by that planet? So the Saturnian planet is called, the Saturn person is called Saturnian. The Jupiterian person is called Jupiterian, but also jovial, because being jovial is a Jupiter term. The Martian person is called Martian or Martial. The solar person is called solar, and the Venusian person, I shit you not, is called venereal. Is that funny? That cracks me up every single time, that people ruled by Venus are called venereal, and Venus also rules venereal diseases, which is really, really cool and very, very interesting. Because the venereal disease comes from participating in too much venery. And venery is the pursuits of Venus. Wow. Isn't language great? So anyway, so I was saying all that to say that Jupiter, the greater benefic, can also do a great amount of harm as well, because Jupiter is also ruling too much, excess. You see? And this person has their Jupiter at the southern, no, that's pause, brain. Yes, this person has their, no.
Northern.
It's at the northern. Sorry, my brain was doing strange things a while ago. It wasn't doing strange things. What your brain does once you're trying to say something is it looks for other ways to say that same thing. And Jupiter at the southern bending was far more exciting than Jupiter at the northern bending. But anyway, So coming back to this, and by means of wrapping up, because we do have to wrap up. So let's take 3 more minutes leaning into this. I forgot my train of thought. Where was I?
Were you looking at the declination table with Jupiter?
Yeah, but, oh, that's interesting that the Jupiter is parallel Chiron as well, which may also be another indication of excess and some of the things that come from too much, you know? When your Jupiter is Chiron, or when your Chiron is Jupiter, then excess becomes another part of your Chironian health story, basically. But that's not what I really was looking at. What I was looking at was moving on to the 4th house. Well, there's a lot here. We didn't even deal with the 2nd house. The 2nd house ruler is the sun. The sun is conjunct the ascendant. My money is important to me, which, I mean, that's the end of that story. My money is important to me in this lifetime, which is another Cancerian thing. And the reason why my money may be so important to me is because my money goes through a great amount of Plutonian turmoil and a great amount of Plutonian changes within my life. And therefore, it doubles down the importance of money within my life and what money means to me. The fact that my money has been Plutoed several times. And what Pluto means is that Pluto is all of the things beyond our control that drag us down into the underworld, basically. And as a result of that, I strive to have a better sense of my own financial security because I know what it is to have your money completely torpedoed by Pluto, which is a thing. The next thing that we see here is the South Node is in that 2nd house, and the South Node in the 2nd house could also be an indication of that same thing in terms of saying that, you know, beyond my best efforts, the money gets Plutoed, or beyond my best efforts, the money gets drained out. And beyond my best efforts, it feels as if there's a hole within my pocket, which is what happens when we have the South Node anywhere, but particularly the South Node in the 2nd house. And so I'm always considering all of the ways in which I can find financial security and all the ways in which I can secure my coin, because there seems to be some inbuilt things within my life that possibly doesn't allow that portion of my life to be the most fixed thing in terms of stability. Now we move on and we see the Mercury there in the 2nd house as well. Mercury is ruling the 3rd house and Mercury is in the 2nd house. What other houses Mercury rule? Only the 11th house. And so here we have my siblings, ruler of the 3rd house, in my 2nd house, which is their 12th house. So my siblings are in their own 12th house. Any aspects these siblings pick up? None whatsoever. Let's look in the declination table. Any aspects these siblings pick up? None whatsoever. So my siblings are in their own 12th house, which I don't have that much commentary about that now as we rush towards the end of this reading. But my siblings are in their 12th house. And, you know, we wonder why people are in their 12th house. This person themselves is in their 12th house. You know, the native of this chart is in their 12th house. If we use the moon as mother, mom is also in the 12th house. My siblings are in their 12th house, you know. So there's a lot of 12th house stuff going on within this chart of people actively not wanting to be seen or people actively wanting to be hidden, locked away within the privacy of their own home situation, because that is just a far safer situation for them in general. Now, the Venus, we've already spoken about the Venus ad nauseum and the things that the Venus might indicate. The 5th house is representing the wealth of my fathers, the wealth of my family, and that is Mars in an exact trine with the moon. Now that Mars in an exact trine with the moon is a saving grace for this person, because it says that this person, even though there isn't much other ancestral wealth signatures that are showing up here, what that says is that this person does benefit from the wealth of their father and their household and their home. And it's a wonderful trine aspect. And the wonderful trininess of this trine says to us that this person has both a job, that's tied into their pleasures. And I think I was giving a reading for someone last week who, I think it was Christina's friend, who had the friend who was a teacher. So because I learned that lesson from you last week, Christina, I will go and say that this person's job, this person who we're dealing with, their job is also including children. So children from the 5th house and 10th house, my job. The children that I work with become a very positive influence within my life. Mars, Moon. This could be the chart of a pediatric surgeon because it's a very pediatric surgeon. He saw the chart. The reason why we say pediatric surgeon is because Martian people are not afraid of blood. Martian people are the ones who watch the horror movies and the ones who love the blood and the gore and the ones who watch The Walking Dead and the ones who watch Grey's Anatomy. Because Martian people aren't afraid of blood. They're not afraid of surgery and they're not afraid of those things, you see? So that's the Mars implication. And as I'm saying this, I'm getting goosebumps because I was trying to figure out what I should be going back to school next year to study. And I'm a very Martian person. And I think I just figured out my thing. Anyway, because I love Grey's Anatomy. All right, so that's that. What it also says is the 5th house ruler in a trine aspect to my moon says that my monetary life is supported to a great deal by the monetary situations of my father or of my household and home, and they're deeply interwoven within my life. So family money becomes of a great deal of support for me personally. And moving on to, and because of the trine aspect, we can say that this is a person who loves their job, basically. This is a person who loves their job. My passions and my job are deeply interwoven with each other, and I love my job. And then the last thing that we'll do is talk about the relationship situation for this person. And we haven't done all the houses, please forgive me. But the relationship situation of this person is indicated by that same Saturn squaring that moon, and the Saturn squaring the moon ruling your lover or your husband or your wife or your spouse isn't necessarily, you know, it's a real doozy. But this isn't your regular type of Saturn. This is a Saturn exalted. And there's an ancient aphorism that says that when Saturn or Mars, the two quote unquote evil planets, when Saturn or Mars are exalted within your chart, I just saw another thing. This person has the Mars in Scorpio trining the moon in the 12th house. This is the sort of person who's going to save the puppy from the burning building. And chances are this is a person who has saved the puppy from a burning building, at least at one point in time during their lives. This is a person who's had to put their lives on the line, essentially, to save somebody else. Now, moving on in terms of the Mars situation, the Saturn situation, this person has a very good Mars and a very good Saturn. Is Sam here, Sam?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Sam, that person who I'm seeing later, can you just ask them to give me 5 minutes, please?
Definitely.
Thank you so much. Okay, cool. So the last thing is that with this Saturn being exalted, when either Saturn or Mars is exalted or in their own sign, it represents a person who has the power to kill you, but doesn't kill you because they're so noble. The exact term is it's a person who does not want to tread upon their enemies, because Saturn and Mars are going to be the enemy planets within your chart. But when you have them in their own dignities, it's a person who is too noble to tread upon you. So they keep you captive, but they don't chop your head off in public, basically, because they're noble enemies to have. So we could say that this person in relation to their spouse may be someone who they possibly have an antagonistic sort of relationship situation with. And by virtue of the moon being 1 degree forward in front of that Saturn, we might say that if there's anyone to leave that situation, i.e. if there's someone to initiate a separation between them, it may be this person themselves, the person who owns this chart. But in general, we see this spouse down here being such a noble cloth within their lives that this spouse down here may not, one, be the person to initiate the separation, and two, what's the number two? It's the person who can live with the relationship as it is, regardless of how dysfunctional it is, because the Saturn in Libra wants to maintain some sense of its exaltation and how it presents itself in the world. This is a very interesting chart of a very creative person who's probably also very musical, who has a very big family piece within their lives. They also have a very big mother piece within their lives. And this sort of person when life sets you up to be a sensitive sort of person and to have things that happen to you that cause you to be a sensitive sort of person, you should go in and do sensitive fields, and you should go and do sensitive sort of work, because you have the sensitivity. You've experienced enough in terms of everything that we've said thus far to give you the sensitivity to work in fields that require a lot of grace and sensitivity and poise and skill. And pediatric surgery is one of them. Okay, that's it for this chart. Who does this chart belong to? Or whose person is this chart belonging to?
Me again.
Oh, you, what? Who are you?
Christina.
Who is this person?
It's my mother.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
On a scale of 1 to 10, Christina?
10. The only, well, you know what? 9.5, because the only thing is she's not a pediatric surgeon or anything like that. But.
Okay, well, let me tell you something about me receiving 10. I hate receiving a 10 because I don't trust it.
So that's why I said 9.5.
9.5 is good. 9.5 makes me feel happy about life. Okay, Christina, tell us the details.
Okay. Wow. Where to begin?
Does she have a dimple? Does she have a love dimple in her chin?
Not in her chin. She has dimples on the side of her face.
Are they deep?
I mean, she's a little wrinkly now, so time went on, but yeah, okay. she had dimples on the side. Okay, so yes, bright personality, warm, definitely friends or family, 110%. All growing up, we always had a big table full of every friend, who didn't have a place came over, that was 100% always the way. And she's still like that. Where it's just like, yeah. There was, so the alcoholism piece, her father was a functioning alcoholic in the household, and died of the complications of alcoholism. Not when she was young, but not young. Like, so when she was like a teenager in their 20s.
So question, did the father have kidney issues as a result of that, or it wasn't?
I think that he bled from his stomach or something like that. I don't quite remember, because it was before I was born by many, many years, and it's obviously not something she loves to talk about. But yes, I know that it was related to his alcoholism. It's like basically he got so sick because of that. And so she has at times had issues with alcohol. I don't think she is an alcoholic, but like if she does get to a place and does start drinking, it can go bad fast, and then she has to stop. Like, and she's not someone who can a little bit, Let me see, whatever. The mental trauma surrounding the mother. I don't really, I mean, I grew up with my grandmother in my house, so I knew her very well. And interesting relationship. But I know that in the past, I don't know if it happened during my mother's childhood, but like with my mother's older siblings, that my grandmother went through, she had an abusive relationship and went through a mental breakdown, and she had to send the kids away for a little while. But that was again before my mother was born. And so I don't know if that still played a factor by the time my mother, because her oldest sister is 16 years older than her. So I don't know if it still played a factor in her childhood. She never said as much, but maybe she just never said as much, versus it didn't. It was easier to talk about what happened in the past than what happened to her. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was, yes, changeable emotions, definitely 100%. Does treat everyone like family. I underlined the thing, you need to read the bold print about other people. She's so giving, and it's just like, she's taught me a lot of discernment through seeing things, and I'm just like, yeah, but you knew they were an asshole from the beginning. So why exactly? And she'll even say, yes, I did. And then she's like sitting there crying about how they did her wrong. And it's like, but you knew. And she's like, yeah, I did know. And that makes no difference whatsoever to anything happening again. She's a senior citizen now. It is what it is. And then health definitely dominates the life issues. She has had she actually has had kidney issues. She had hepatitis C that she caught when she was a child from a blood transfusion because she got into an accident as a child. And they had to give her a blood transfusion. It was before they tested for that sort of thing. So that has definitely impacted her life. And then the wrangling and jangling with the spouse. I like that. That's a nice way of talking about my parents' relationship. Yes, the wrangling and jangling. They broke up so many times, back together again. They still talk to each other weekly, divorced for 10, I don't know how many years, longer than I've been married. And they still talk to each other weekly, and then they can't stand each other. They're best friends. They hate each other. Whatever. I don't know. Stay out of it.
Wrangling and jangling.
All the days of their lives.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And as always, thank you. 2 weeks in a row. Wow.
I know.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for allowing us to benefit from this learning, because we are here as an astrological research institute. That is what Oraculos is. It's not just about the performance of astrology in action. This is how we facilitate astrological research. And this is what astrological research looks like. So, my darling hearts, I've had a wonderful time this evening. I hope that you too have had a wonderful time this evening. If you have any questions, queries, concerns, please, thank you for coming, call in. If you have any questions, queries, concerns, please feel free to shoot them to me via email, unless you have a question right now, which Sam is going to kill me because I need to go right now. But if you have a tiny question right now, I'll answer it right now. Yes, Celeste?
Hey, so you said midpoints are the creme de la creme? What's a quick reference point that, we can read, or, what?
Combinations of stellar influences. Combinations of Stellar Influences by Reinhold Eberton is the book for midpoint use. The combination of stellar influences. And I think that should be the next thing that we do within our masterclass series, perhaps. We've done all of this regular astrology work. You must have learned something by now. Now we can move on to midpoints. All right, everyone. And Liz, if you have no way of getting that book in Jamaica, I will send you a copy. You just let me know. All right, my darling hearts, you're awesome. You're amazing in every way that matters. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being you. Kadesi, thank you for being here. Liz, thank you for coming back. Kathy, thank you for coming every week since the beginning. Celeste, same to you. Good night, my darlings. I love
Thank
you all.
you. Good
Be well.
night.
Bye.